Hi everyone, this is Emily here at the Great Plains Nature Center, and we just want to let you know the building unfortunately is still closed, but we are still trying to bring you guys some awesome educational content, and of course the park is still open if you want to get outside and enjoy the great outdoors. This week what we're going to be doing is talking about weather and climate and wildlife. So today I'm going to be doing a quick little presentation to kind of just get a head start on all of that stuff, explain some things, and talk about just the weather that we've been having lately and springtime, because it's a pretty cool part of the year that has some pretty interesting weather. If you have any questions, please comment below. Feel free to reach out to us, just whatever you guys need, and we'll try to get back with you. So specifically today we'll be talking about April showers and what they bring. Today is currently April 27th, so we're right here at the tail end of April, and just this past week or so we've had some crazy rain, just kind of out of nowhere, thunderstorms that have passed through really quickly, at least here in Wichita. And so let's just kind of dive into that idea of April showers and what they bring, because precipitation is super duper important. Rainfall is super duper important because of course all things need it to be able to survive. And the rain, how much it happens, where and when it happens really greatly affects the abundance of species and the presence of species, not only in Kansas but also throughout the world, so globally. So this idea of April showers comes from this proverb, and I'm sure you've heard this proverb before. It was originally recorded in 1886, and it is March winds and April showers bring forth May flowers, especially that last part you've probably heard. So what we're going to be doing today is talking about April showers. Where did this saying come from? How much truth is actually in it, if any? And what else does precipitation bring other than flowers, especially during the springtime? So before we get too far into that, just wanted to cover a couple of terms. So weather and climate, what are the difference between those two things? So weather is the short term. It's the conditions like temperature, humidity, precipitation, wind, what is currently happening outside. That can be minute by minute or day by day, those different changes that happen. Where climate is kind of different. They both have to do with how the atmosphere actually behaves, but climate is over a much longer period of time, and it's an accumulation of those weather conditions in a specific area, kind of all averaged out. That's where we get the idea of climate. So this, I think, was explained really well by an example from NASA. So weather is what you get. It could be a hot day with pop-up thunderstorms, but the climate is actually what you expected to get. So a very hot summer. Again, climate could be years, decades, really long period of time of looking at the average of all those different weather conditions. So let's look at April showers then. Do you think that idea of April showers is weather or climate? You know, like, it could be weather, but it could also be climate, because it's obviously something that we expect, right? So it does kind of depend on where you're at. Those April showers, especially in the northern hemisphere, we can kind of expect to be climate, but a shower, of course, could almost always be weather too, depending on when it's happening, what part of the year it's happening in. But especially for the northern hemisphere, particularly in the United Kingdom, is where we get this idea of April showers, especially being like a climate thing, since it's something we've seen over decades pretty much and can expect. But we do have some of it here in the United States as well, and of course it's characterized by excessively stormy and rainy weather. But what causes these April showers? What is it in the atmosphere that is causing this to be a climate thing in some places and a weather thing in other places? So what's actually causing these April showers is the jet stream. And this is a high-speed, narrow ribbon of winds that's way, way up in the air. You can see 30,000 to 50,000 feet. And the weather is caused by this actually moving. Now, if you've watched the weather on the news, you may have seen something like in this picture, where that jet stream is actually represented by a ribbon that's going across the United States, or wherever you happen to be watching the weather at. So that jet stream is what makes it to where springtime can be sunshine one day and then snow and sleet the next day. So here in the United States, what's happening is that early spring, the jet stream is actually moving from its winter position down in Mexico up towards its summer home over the southern border of Canada. And so as this is moving north, it's steering a bunch of different storm systems across the United States. The season has a lot more intense sunlight also, which contributes to the storminess that we tend to see here in the United States, especially during springtime. So now that we kind of know where this comes from, we're going to go into April specifically. So we know where this springtime storminess comes from, but why do we specifically associate it with April? Why is it April showers bringing May flowers? Because as we can see from this graph, April actually isn't the rainiest month of the year, not in Kansas and not in the United States. So what we have on this graph is for Kansas. It's a climogram. And what you see here, this is data from 1895 all the way to 2011. So this is kind of a climate thing that we're looking at, and we're seeing these trends over a long period of time. And so the bars, those blue bars that we're looking at, are precipitation in millimeters, and that black line is going to be temperature in Celsius throughout the year. So as you can see, the blue bars are the highest over June, so that's going to be the rainiest month of the year for Kansas, generally speaking. And April is actually only 6th. It's the 6th rainiest month of the year. For the United States, that also holds true. United States, the rainiest month is June. But for April is the 5th rainiest month of the United States in general. So this idea of April showers, it's not even the rainiest month of the year. So I think where that comes from is that, one, it's the first full month of spring that we tend to have, and it is where we start to get a rise in rain for the beginning of the year. So we've had this long winter, not a lot of rain, then all of a sudden April hits, and it is, the rainiest month so far. So it's kind of like, whoa, there's rain all over the place now. What's happening? So I think that's kind of where this idea of April showers originally came from, even though June is the rainiest. Now, that could be different in the United Kingdom and other places, but here in the United States, it is kind of in the middle of the pack as far as rainy months goes. But the saying stuck, and we still expect quite a bit of rain during April. And of course, with April becomes like just this upsurge of springtime life, which that April rain really does help with. We see a lot more plants and animals starting to come out in April, especially with not only the rain, but the warmer weather. The warmer weather, of course, helps a lot for a lot more life to come out. So let's look at a couple of those species you may have noticed popping up a lot more recently that are affected by the warmer temperatures and also the increase in rainfall. So this list is just kind of ones that I noticed from looking around outside, some that tend to be more prominent, I guess, or maybe some of the first things you started to notice. There is, of course, a lot more out there than this, but this is just a couple of them. So two trees you may have noticed lately that have just absolutely beautiful white flowers on them are the Bradford pear and also the flowering dogwood. The dogwood, is behind my head currently, but that is a flowering dogwood there on the right. Now, the Bradford pear, especially here in Wichita, is all over the place, and it's probably the first thing you noticed actually flowering as soon as spring and kind of that warmer weather came around. But it's actually not native. It's also called a calorie pear, and they are considered actually invasive in a bunch of places. They've been used as sort of an ornamental plant, and they are very pretty, but they also stink really bad and can kind of take over. So they are originally from Asia, actually. Now, there is also another tree that looks a lot like it, and that is the flowering dogwood. So you can see kind of the different petals on each of these. The Bradford pear tends to have like 5 petals, whereas the flowering dogwood actually only has 4. And you can also see those middle parts actually look really different on each of the flowers too. So flowering dogwood is native, and it's also another one you can expect to see blooming in April or in pretty early spring because of all of the warm weather. Oops, sorry about that. All of the warm weather and the rainfall that we've been getting lately. Next, we have a couple of more sort of purpley pink flowers that you may have seen. The eastern redbuds are all over the place. Here in the park, we have a ton of them, and they're absolutely beautiful. And they are native, especially in the eastern third of Kansas. You can kind of find them all over the place. And whenever they do lose those flowers, you can still identify them by their heart-shaped leaves, which are really pretty. They're pretty cool little trees. Another one is henbit. If you've noticed tiny little flowers, and I keep looking outside to see if I see any, if you've noticed tiny little flowers all over the ground that are really short and purple like this, it's probably henbit. Now, this is a weed. This is also not native, but I did want to mention it because it's something that you see all over the place right now. It's crazy how it's taken over. So it is incredibly common, but it is not native, unfortunately. But it is definitely a sign that spring has sprung. Next, we're going to go into some animals that kind of start showing up. After the long winter has gone, the rains start to come back. This warmer weather comes back. We start to see a lot more animals get more active with those warmer temperatures. And especially amphibians, they rely heavily on that rainfall. They love being in pools of water. They need it for their skin. They also need it to reproduce. And you may have heard lately a bunch of these frogs calling because they're looking for ladies. And so these spring rains that we get here in April really, really are essential for these guys. The boreal chorus frog is the first one that started kind of calling this year, at least from what I heard. They've been all over the park. They kind of have that sort of raking your finger down a comb noise. And so that's that little guy on the corridor, really, really tiny. And then plains leopard frog is one that we'll start to hear also soon. I've seen a couple outside, but haven't quite heard them yet. And that's another one that starts to get really, really common here in April and May as we get these warmer temperatures and more rain. Another amphibian is the woodhouse toad, this guy on the right. They also start calling around this time and get more active with the warmer weather and rainfall. And red ear sliders. Red ear sliders, they're mainly dependent on, of course, the water because they live in the water, but also those warmer temperatures. Since all these amphibians and reptiles are cold-blooded or ectothermic, they get their heat from the outside. They really do need those warmer temperatures that come with this time of year to be able to start moving around. Otherwise, they're basically moving in slow motion or not moving at all during the winter. So these warmer temperatures are finally bringing these guys back up. A couple of other animals, some mammals, that you may have started noticing more recently are big brown bats and eastern cottontails, those rabbits you've seen jumping all over the place. Big brown bats, they do hibernate, and so they're coming out now that we have these warmer temperatures. And eastern cottontails are coming out because now that spring has come, it's time for them to start having babies. And that's what we see with a lot of mammals right now, is they're out foraging for food and getting ready to breed and reproduce and have babies. And of course, just as a little side note, it's best to leave these guys alone. They're doing their thing. They know how to be outside. And if you see some baby animals by themselves, more than likely they either know how to be by themselves and survive, or their mom is close by and they're not abandoned. Especially with these rabbits, they just leave during the day and their little babies are just kind of doing their thing, and the mom will come back later. So these are a couple just more of the species that you may start to notice more or have already noticed with these April showers that we've been getting. And just here before we end, I did want to show you guys this really, really cool Kansas map. So this is annual precipitation that we get here in Kansas. Over in the bottom right, those purpley colors are where we have the most rainfall. And actually, as you move west in Kansas, you can see we get less and less rainfall the further west you go. So it's really cool that we just have this massive precipitation gradient that grows across the state. And of course, this is annual. This is not by the month. This is just what we see. And again, it just reinforces that idea of how precipitation really changes the abundance of species, the type of species that we get, their presence or absence in an area. And so this changes drastically statewide, which gives us a really cool variety of species of animals and plants statewide too, because you have the forests over east, you have wetlands, you have kind of almost desert towards Colorado, and of course the beautiful tall grass prairie, mixed grass prairie in the middle. And so it's just a really cool mix of species we have that's based all around this abundance of rainfall, this weather and climate that greatly affects the species that we have here in Kansas. So I hope this little presentation has kind of helped you out. Of course, we've learned April is not the rainiest month of the year, but that rain and warm weather that kind of starts in April definitely kickstarts spring and all these flowering plants that start to come up, and really helps give them a fighting chance to be able to make it the rest of the year. Just so you know, we'll be posting something related to this theme for the rest of the week. Keep checking out our content. Any educational content that we've been posting has been on Facebook, it's been on our YouTube page, and also on our website, gpnc.org. So make sure you're checking all of these places, because we'd love to help you keep on learning throughout this time of quarantine. So we'll be back with more educational programs, and you guys have a great day.